Good to be back at Slush. Great to see you all. Thanks for coming. So today, I will talk to you a bit about big things starting small. Not only me, but also the company that I represent, iZettle, and also our customers. I'll try to share with you some of our thoughts on where Fintech is going over the next couple of years, some of the trends that we see, and some of the things that we're working on. So, let's start off with iZettle today. We have come quite a long way. We have roughly 140 million euros invested. We had roughly 1,000 new merchants on a daily basis across the 12 different markets where we operate. According to some statistics, we're one of the fastest growing software companies in Europe. So overall, I think iZettle is pretty much a growth story by now. We've been working with this for almost 6 years, and things were not always the way they look in the papers and the way that you might expect they have been. So I'm going to be sharing to you some of our experiences over the last couple of years. Right now, where we see the most growth, given that we are the market leaders both in Europe but also in South Latin America, we see good growth in Europe, good growth numbers. Europe is actually moving in a very interesting direction, which means that entire Europe is pretty much following what's happening in the Nordics. We're going towards a cashless society, meaning that if you look at the Swedish market, for example, we're down to using less than 2% of cash for all the transactions that we do. And in the rest of the Nordics, we're roughly at 6%. And if you look at the rest of Europe, you're somewhere in the area of 15 to 20%. That is changing pretty rapidly, which means fantastic opportunities, but also some challenges, of course. So, as I said, this is a story about iZettle and what we've been up to over the last 6 years. And just taking you a bit back in time to show you how long ago this actually was. I mean, this was at the point in time when there was no Slack, no Snapchat. The Instagram had just launched. Justin Bieber was an innocent child, and to a certain extent, so was I. And what was interesting back then was that we came to realize already back in 2010 the rising and sort of more significant problem by the day for small companies to find financial services tailored for their needs. We realized that across Europe, there are roughly 30 million companies in the size of between 1 to 15, 20 employees. And these companies, they have been sort of not let down by the financial industry for several years, but all the products designed by the financial industry and by the banks, they are typically tailored for bigger companies, which makes a lot of sense. Because it's pretty time-consuming and pretty expensive to onboard these smaller companies. And that's what we came to realize. Every company in Europe, given what's happening across Europe in terms of cash being on a decline, needs to find ways to get paid. And that's where we started, a payment solution with the ambition to democratize card payments. So what's interesting here is that 95% of all businesses are actually let out of the traditional offering from the financial industry and by the banks. And the interesting thing that's even more interesting, I would say, is that they represent roughly 25 to 30% of the GDP in any given market. 25 to 30% just left out, sort of left aside of the traditional sort of offering. And I would say what's interesting about technology is that it's a true democratizer in many ways. Because with technology comes change and opportunity. And in this particular case, the opportunity that arose was actually the opportunity for small businesses to get access to the same kind of financial solutions as the bigger players, giving them the possibility to grow their business to the next level, basically. And showing you where we started, we still think that this is probably the most sort of disruptive part of technology that we ever brought to market, even though we're 6 years later and have done pretty much sort of advanced from a technological perspective. But this is how we launched back in 2011. We re-engineered basically the entire sort of infrastructure for card payments with a solution that we called Signature on Glass. It was very simple, very easy to use kind of dongle that you plugged into your cell phone. And just with the click of a button, anyone could take card payments, whether you were an individual or whether you were a small business. It was so simple to use that you couldn't fail. And the way to verify your transaction was by using your finger and putting a signature on the glass of your phone. So we thought this was pretty disruptive, and it was the first solution in the world which gave access to this type of infrastructure to anyone. So everyone was hugely excited, not only sort of investors, but we saw, every number in the book sort of hockey sticked on us. We saw tremendous growth everywhere, even though all the banks and everyone else kept telling us that, this is a pointless product. Everyone can already take card payments. And for those who can't, they won't be interested in this product because you don't have a PIN pad solution. So consumers won't trust you enough to actually put their signature on the phone and verify the transaction. They were proven wrong. Everything kind of exploded on us in a positive way, obviously. So with Justin Bieber playing in the background, finally, we were happy as ever. Had A/B investors coming in, but then all of a sudden, something changed. One of the major card schemes decided that this is not a viable solution. This is not according to the rule book. So from one day to the other, they decided to shut down 3 of our 4 markets. And we lost out roughly 75% of all transactions overnight. So what to do? Well, it took us some time, eventually realizing that we had to find another track. And we came to launch roughly 6 months later, and another solution with more sort of the traditional way of taking payments. In many ways, less disruptive if you look from a technological perspective, but still a solution that was appreciated by the market. And today, this solution looks like this. It's a chip and pin reader for mobile, the world's first at that time. And a couple of months later, we were also the first to launch the possibility of accepting Apple Pay, Google Pay, Android Pay transactions with the same device. So what doesn't really kill you makes you stronger, apparently. And soon enough, we saw sort of the growth curves for our company started growing again. So after all, it turned out to be a pretty sort of positive, call it pivot or change or whatever you like to call it, but eventually it turned out to the better. iZettle has developed pretty much since then. Today, we're much more than just payments. We kind of offer the full sort of offering in terms of business intelligence and not only payments. Because what we came to realize already sort of back in 2012 was that the core of what we do has nothing to do with payments. We cannot be a payments company. Payments eventually will be commoditized. Hardware will be commoditized. So what is the core of what we do? Core of what we do is data. So developing this sort of business intelligence tool in the background, sort of the POS or the point of sale solution that effectively records all transactions. A customer can sort of create their own product libraries saying that I sell carrots and I sell salad, etc. And we do all the tracking. We help the customer, the merchant, analyze the numbers, looking at sort of the most profitable products to sell, how to mix, match, and bundle, etc. So that's where we started, coming back from payments into data more and more. And this development has continued. So today, iZettle is something totally different. We offer so many more things compared to what we used to. Obviously, we still offer you the possibility of getting paid as a core. Second part, what we offer is managing your sales through the business intelligence system. But third, based on the data that we help collect for our merchants, that we give back to the merchants, we have started building the next generation of financial services, tailor-made for this underserved segment that I've been talking about initially, sort of the 95% of the companies. And the first product that we launched in this segment based on data is what we call iZettle Advance, which is effectively a cash advance or a loan, depending on how you define it. The way that we handle data is to project your future card sales. Based on those future card sales, we analyze the risk of giving you a cash advance so that you can grow your business. Because the biggest problem after getting paid for these merchants is, how do I fund my business to open my second restaurant or second barbershop or whatever it might be to continue the growth path? Banks will never give you a loan unless you have the proper credit scoring. Credit scoring, in my opinion, is yesterday's news. It's one number that you get once a year. Doesn't say anything about the current business. What we do is we look at live data, we analyze that data in real time, and we present a financial offer that is tailor-made for you, depending on your size, depending on how long you've been in the business, and the actual risk. And this is just the beginning, obviously. The future of payments and the future of the financial services is about data. And just to give you an example how little data has been used by the traditional industry, it's roughly estimated that the banks currently use less than 4% of their aggregated data. Less than 4%. It's a bit like comparing having access to Spotify and only listening to ABBA songs. It's a complete waste of time. So, gazing a bit into the future now. Remember what I told you about the product that we launched in 2011, Signature on Glass. Everyone was against it, nobody believed in it. Eventually was shut down because it was probably too early. Also remembering the fact that technology is the true democratizer. What's going to happen next year? The discussions in the industry right now is the development from something that we sort of brought to the market roughly 5 years ago, but in a more refined version. We call this PIN on glass. So you can see the tremendous sort of step forward in this industry over 5 years. Now we are discussing the possibility for card holders or Apple Pay holders or whatever you like to, instead of plugging in your card or paying with Apple Pay or similar and then entering your PIN on the device, now it's all of a sudden there are discussions around whether consumers should be allowed to enter that PIN on the screen of the device. Oh, the development. But this is actually pretty big in the industry, and it's still debated whether consumers will find it trustful enough to actually enter their PIN onto somebody else's iPhone or tablet or what have you. So technology is slowly but surely making a change also in the financial industry. So this is highly interesting. We've been experimenting with this for a while. We're testing it with consumers in Europe, testing to see the reaction and how big a challenge it actually is to bring this kind of technology to a market where chip and PIN is so mature and so much in everybody's sort of, so it's such a high level of awareness for this sort of security product. It's pretty interesting to see how people react. Overall, it's actually pretty positive. Next thing that's happening in the financial industry is what I just talked about. Coming back to data. Data is the new oil or new gold or whatever you like to call it. Over the last 2 years, roughly 90% of all aggregated data has been collected. Over the last 2 years only. So this is growing exponentially by the day. And obviously for the financial industry, just as I explained to you, looking at our sort of product with iZettle Advance, all the next generation of financial services will be based on data in order to be much more precise, much more efficient, much more concrete when it comes to risk and risk assessment for the merchants that you want to offer a solution or a financial service to. So effectively going forward, what you're going to see in the financial industry is really not some sort of magical disruption in terms of new financial services. The financial services out there that are offered to every company today, they will remain, but they will be based on underlying new fundamentals, data. So it's not going to be once upon a year you look at your balance sheet, your P&L, and you assess sort of a credit risk. It's going to be based on live data. And this sort of transformation, this change, will be fueled by sort of what's happening in the EU when it comes to the PSD2 directive from the EU, meaning effectively that banks will have to open up for any third party, more or less, to access the bank data. And that will drive the industry significantly faster compared to what it has been, what you have seen over the last 10, 20, 30 years. So big change is going on for sure. And you'll see the effect on everything from factoring services, term loans, insurance, loans in general, etc. This is just the beginning. And just to finish this off with sort of a nice bedtime story from us, this is the taco truck. It's a restaurant service in Stockholm. It started off with a food truck. Eventually they realized that, hell, this is going pretty well. We want to set up our first restaurant. They went to the bank. They turned over, at that point in time, they turned over 1 million euros a year, only based on this food truck. The bank told them, not a chance. You've been a customer less than a year. Restaurant business is highly risky. We're not going to give you the loan. You won't even be granted a credit line. They came to us, we looked at the data, we assessed the risk, we gave them a first cash advance of 50,000 euros. Now, 2 years later, Taco Truck still have their truck, but they have an additional 3 restaurants, which means effectively that they are helping out, sort of fighting unemployment in Sweden, together with all the other sort of great entrepreneurs out there. So if we can help this community with new types of financial services, this is not only sort of a win for iZettle as a business, but also hopefully we can actually have a greater effect on the economy, not only in Sweden, but across Europe and Latin America, we're currently present. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening. Have a nice evening.